ego is your dark passenger. It's always going to be there. It's just, if you know it's always there, how can you navigate life better with it?
You're listening to the Kristof Lewis podcast, a podcast where I have conversations with inspirational people. My name is Chris, but my family calls me Kristof. My goal is to have as many conversations as possible with people who have forged their own path by pursuing their dreams, making them a reality, all the while emitting positivity and sharing this knowledge with others. I seek these people out and share this information with you, proving to the world that you can do what makes you happy and do what you want for a living while being a good human being. We'll talk about careers, but we'll also cover any story that inspires. Let's do this while helping each other. Thanks for listening. I'm happy you're here. Hey, my friends, welcome to the Kristof Lewis podcast, Create Your Career. This is conversation number 148. Total episodes number 252. Thank you so much for being here. I'm always excited, always humbled to have you on here. This episode is insanely good. I feel like that, am I in the right to say that about my own podcast? It's not necessarily about my podcast. It's about the guests that come on here, like the absolute fire that these guests bring and the level of emotion, the level of impact, it's just so powerful. All these stories. Sharing your story is so powerful with the intention of helping others. And this is exactly what my guest does today. It's so good. My guest today is Chase Chewning. He's former Army and he is the founder of Ever Forward Enterprises, which is also a very successful podcast. He shared a lot of life stories with us, his transition out of the military, and a whole lot more. It just when I thought the conversation was so good, which was from the beginning, it just kept on getting better and getting better and getting better. And I love how we're able to end with him sharing such an emotional story about his family. So thank you so much for sharing that, Chase. And thank you again so much for being here. Remember, you can find this episode and all other conversations, the contemplations, on kristoflewis.com/podcast on any podcast app. And head over to YouTube and subscribe, and you can watch the conversations, the ones with the guests. And you can find me on Instagram at Kristof Lewis. As I said so many times before, and I mean it now, especially in today's day and age with everything going on. I truly appreciate the time that you're giving me to be able to continue to create content on this level, to be able to continuously share these stories of these incredible human beings. If you yourself has an incredible story and you want to share it for other people, it would not only benefit them, but it would benefit you to share your story, even if you think you're not ready. And that's just a little bit of what we talked about today. So without further ado, welcome to the Kristof Lewis podcast, Create Your Career.
Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's an absolute pleasure. We were just chatting offline before recording, and I was like, man, we better start this or we're going to just get into some stuff already, and I want to capture some of this stuff. But it's cool, man. You're really personable, and that's one of the things that drew me to you originally. And for the background of all the listeners here, I was asking for podcast advice. Somebody suggested you. I can't remember who it is. If you're listening, thank you. And unfortunately and embarrassingly enough, I'm not even adhering to the advice you gave me right now because I'm still trying to sort out some things that I'm doing. But no, you were really helpful, and that's one of my stipulations always for this podcast. If you're a new listener, and then for yourself, Chase, is I don't only want people that are doing good things and just in a good place in their life, but my stipulation is for people that are helping other people. And you helped me right off the bat. Boom, no questions asked. So
yeah,
I appreciate that.
Was it like? It was a tech thing with your mic or your
setup?
Yeah.
So it's really the setup in totality between, because I have two cameras going here. I have the mic, and then I'm recording your screen as well. And I don't wear headphones right now, so I have this wonky, janky setup, embarrassingly enough, but it works, and I want to get away from that, but I still haven't gotten it better to what I have right now, so I haven't moved forward on it. Yeah, but no, I appreciate it, man. And before we get into the rest of the episode, would you mind introducing yourself for those of us that don't know who you are?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Chase Chewning. Like my man here, former armed service member. I was active duty Army from 03 to 09. Got out as an E6 staff sergeant. I was in the military intelligence community, and the nature, I wanted to stay in for a long time, but I wound up getting injured just during some war games before even deployment opportunity could even happen. And I wound up getting medically discharged, and that gave me a whole new appreciation for the human body. So long story short, getting separated, getting medically kicked out of the Army, launched my whole new interest in career. Wow. And really health, fitness, wellness, personal development. And it's been 10 years now. And here we are doing whatever this internet thing is now of entrepreneurship, of the internet, social media, influence, podcast. it's just been a wild transition, man.
Yeah. And how cool is that? I think definitely, and again, if you're listening to this in the future, we're recording this in March in 2020, and I've been saying this a little bit lately, but I think it's really pertinent to what we're discussing is you got out on an injury. You didn't really sound like you wanted to get out, but it's been a while, and it is what it is, and things happen, but now you've had such an opportunity because of that, and I just kind of feel like that's the world we're living in right now, and I'm so happy that not that bad things are happening to good people, and I wouldn't wish anybody to lose their job or get sick, but there's a lot of opportunity coming out of that, and it's cool to see in your own story that opportunity arose out of that.
Yeah, I didn't really see it at first. I didn't really know what was going on. I mean, I'll be totally honest. So I was actually medically retired. So it opened up some different benefits and stuff for me, and it made that transition, I'll say, a little bit more bearable. I know, not to get too far into the weeds of military transition, I know there's a lot of room for improvement. Like, I've been out for 10 years now, and I still hear horror stories about similar problems that I went through. So I was kind of like eased into civilian life again, eased into that transition. And I had opportunities I'm super grateful for. And by that, I mean, going back home, having a housing allowance, having school paid for, college benefits. And so I just knew that I knew myself really, if I didn't kind of do something right then and there, it would have been very easy to just stay comfortable with those benefits. And I wanted to just, pursue something. I had no idea what the hell I wanted to do I just knew I needed to do something. And, over time that turned into internships, that turned into jobs, that turned into different things that I could try and test out and, really, really get intentional with it eventually.
Yeah. Intentionality is crucial. And I think understanding that you need to do something and not succumb to the comfortability of what your life is, because the military and those that are listening that don't really know, if you get medically retired, or there's actually a ton of ways you can separate from the military. A lot of those ways you're able to get paid for, rightfully so, because of the injuries that you sustain while serving. And you can easily just rely on that money, and it's just enough to get by, but it's not enough to break out into any means. So I can see in your answer there that you got stuck there a little bit.
You can live for sure. You can live, but you
modestly
can't really thrive.
Sure.
You can't pursue a lot of things that maybe you want to. It's not like you're set for life and living off of, this huge amount of money, not by any means, but your basic human needs are kind of covered in a modest way.
Yeah. So you talked about getting internships, things like that. One domino tipped another domino and another domino. But if we could digress for just a moment, and can you walk us through kind of the mindset between that person that gets stuck in that comfortability zone to for you personally, what helped you break out of that? Maybe some actions that you took, and then some of the thoughts that you had, and maybe some of the behaviors that led to that.
Sure. Yeah, man. Good question. As I kind of worked through my undergrad, I went to school for exercise science, and I had an idea of what I wanted to do. I really felt that the people in businesses and corporations and 9-to-5s, they were missing out on movement, on physical fitness. And so I initially had a very strong passion for, or interest in pursuing, corporate wellness. My first internship was corporate wellness. Realized I hated it. I realized that those people, for the majority, were not motivated. And where I was in my understanding of being a coach and a trainer was, I realized that I wasn't the coach. I wasn't the trainer for people to I got to motivate you first. I got to get something started. I realized that I was much better served to serve people that already kind of had a little bit of traction. I just wanted to help them keep that going and get some momentum. And you would not believe some of the people no, I don't want your free workout. Why are you in my office? And it was just, I was met with so much hostility. I just want to do my job and go home. I was like, but you're overweight. I would never say this out loud, but you don't know how good you can feel. If you just do these small little things, and I really, looking back, I realized that I kind of had a little bit of an unfair, I guess, say vendetta or chip on my shoulders, because I had just overcome so much. I literally learned how to walk again. And these people were complaining twice, actually. Yeah.
Wow.
These people were like, I don't have time, or I have a sore ankle. And I didn't realize it at the time, but definitely looking back now, I was like, what do you mean you're being a selfish a-hole? How dare you take this excuse, take this for granted of, being able to move. and you're just not doing it. Like I was bedridden, I was in a wheelchair, I was all of these things, and it took me so much time and effort to get to just where I am today, to be able to walk around not on a cane.
Wow.
And you're just being lazy. So I realized pretty quickly that's not what I wanted to do. So yeah, I went on to, I had to do 2 internships for that undergrad degree, and wound up doing a lot of different things. And it kind of just slowly filtered down. I was like, let me try personal training. Let me try group exercise. Let me do outdoor boot camps. Let me do this, a little bit of that. And each time, whether it was an official requirement for my degree, my certification, or just, me shadowing somebody, I kind of just made clear, like, this is what I actually got out of it. This is what I thought it was. This is what I want to do. And this is what I don't like. So how can I kind of just do a pros and cons kind of thing, move on to the next?
Yeah, that's
and
cool.
then eventually, wound up working in industries and careers that I loved. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool that you're able to probe different, so you knew like a high level of what you wanted to do, but you didn't know necessarily where you wanted to niche down and find your exact area that you wanted to work in. So it's cool that you were able to go in there and probe like, that's not for me, or that's not for me. So
Yeah.
I always encourage the listener right now, like especially during these times, hopefully for the duration of the episode, but especially like these kind of things, like this is the Kristof Lewis podcast, Create Your Career, and I'm huge on creating things for yourself, and I'm very career-oriented amongst all the other things that we talk about, of course, but right here specifically, a lot of people go, I don't know what to do, I don't know how to find what I want to do. Well,
Oh yeah.
go out there and probe things and just test things, and you're not going to waste your time. You're wasting your time if you're not trying and not going out there by probing it. You're just going to put it off until another time. And I think one of the crazy things that you said is that, first of all, you had to learn how to walk twice. That's crazy. You totally left that out about the earlier part. That's pretty heavy, man.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Long story short, I had to have a really significant hamstring, hip, low back injury, L4, L5 vertebrae. Had to have both my femurs reconstructed completely.
Holy
and I've got hardware like rods and pins going in both of my hips. So I was completely bedridden for days and days. And then, it was all I could do to just use my walker or my cane to go from the bedroom to the kitchen, wheelchair for a long time. And when I got about 8 months after the first surgery, and I could walk upright again and load bear and not compensate, and I could that leg could physically handle my body weight again. It went back, cut me open, did the other side. I just had to go through the whole process all over again. My last about almost a year and a half of active duty, I was a patient. I was in a med hold unit. I was just in and out of the hospital, recovering, rehabbing, and then they medically retired me.
Oh wow, yeah. Just as soon as you heal one side, they're like, "Sorry about that. I know you just learned walk again."
Yep. It's like, I'm a real boy. Congratulations, Pinocchio. We're going back to making you a wooden toy again.
Oh yeah. Dang, that's
heavy.
heavy.
It was tough, man. It was tough.
But that adds some serious perspective. And if I can, because there's a lot of things happening in the world today, and I want to kind of relate it to current events in a sense of the things you were seeing, like people saying like, oh, I have a sore ankle, I can't go do anything right now. And I know that experiencing adversity in your life adds a seriously new perspective to you, and you don't take advantage of maybe the times that you didn't make anything happen before. And again, I want to reiterate, I don't wish anybody to be sick or lose your job or anything like that, but God damn it, it is adding some perspective, some people's lives that have never faced adversity at all right now. And I hope it's making them think. And furthermore, I really hope they take something from this and remember it and continue it for the rest of their lives and not get shell-shocked like a lot of people are right now. Preparedness. Don't be scared. Don't be in fear, but be prepared, and I hope they take that with them.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I don't know if it's a Navy phrase as well, but, I always remember my time in the Army of, if you stay ready, you never have to get ready.
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of people are realizing areas of their life, I wasn't ready or I wasn't ready to be on quarantine. I wasn't ready to be locked down. We're talking COVID times right now. I wasn't ready for, how am I going to pay rent if I don't have a job? I wasn't ready for less of this, more of that. The more you can figure out ways now when times are interesting, maybe uncertain for some people, more stressful for some people. Where can you double down now to make sure that when this happens again, and by this, I mean a super stressful time in your life. I mean an injury. I mean hardship in your family, financial loss, just any significant stress in your life. It's not a matter of if, but only a matter of when. you need to get ready so that when this happens, you know where to cover down, you know your weak points, you know your strengths, you know your community, you know your support system. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here, man, with a military guy. I mean, all we do is just train for the shit to hit the fan all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you hope for peace, but prepare for war.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's 100% pertinent to what we're living right now. Preparedness is crucial. Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's taking a long, hard look, and even though it's not a good situation and a lot of people are just getting jacked up right now, it could be a lot worse. Like I was reading an article on the Blitzkrieg in World War II and people living in London and how they were affected by fear and lack thereof by getting bombed for day after day after day. And I thought, at least we're not getting bombed right now, you know? And I just finished a book, the Hiroshima Diaries, about Hiroshima and the A-bomb getting dropped on there. And holy crap, like, hearing those accounts, like, really put it in perspective. I mean, people's clothes getting blown off them, people's faces melting off, like, absolutely terrible atrocities. And it doesn't take away from what we're experiencing now. What we're experiencing now is real. So I do think
very real, very serious. Yeah.
Yes. So I'm going to completely shift on one of the notes I mentioned about I'm reading some books, and I noticed you've been reading some books and you had some good suggestions lately on Instagram, and I was like, this is awesome.
Oh, cool. Good.
Yeah, man. So I want to ask you for my own selfishness and to share with everybody else, though, like, what's your number one favorite book, and why is it your number one favorite book?
So without kind of going deeper on like the theme or the topic, whatever, I'll say if any human being of any walk of life asked me what's a book recommendation, I would say Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday.
Okay.
He is probably my favorite living author, Ryan Holiday. It's a semi kind of trilogy of Ego is the Enemy, The Obstacle is the Way, and then most recently came out late last year. It's called Stillness is the Key.
Okay.
They're definitely great one-off books, you know, a little section here and there, but just I really love his work and his perspective of the here and the now, the modern approach, but also how he ties in Stoic philosophy, which is a big part of my belief system, and just daily mantras and rituals and habits, but also just great historical figures of peacetime, of wartime, like Amelia Earhart, like JFK, like Napoleon Bonaparte, Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, just great people throughout time who have looked at ego and working through it. And I actually I'll semi disagree with the topic or the name or maybe someone's conception of it. It's not reading this to like understand your enemy and destroy ego. No, it's to understand it and how to see where it comes up in your life, how it actually looks and feels, and to use it for your advantage. I make this analogy. Have you ever seen the show Dexter? You know the show Dexter?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I reference it. My kind of understanding is the takeaway was, you know, ego is the enemy is really learning how to sit with that dark passenger. Mm-hmm. Ego is your dark passenger, just like, you know, Dexter had his. You know, it's always going to be there. It's just, you know, if you know it's always there, how can you navigate life better with it? So Ego is the enemy, number one, but also anything Holiday does is my favorite.
Yeah, I haven't read any. I wrote it down here. I'll put it in the show notes for everybody listening as well, so you can easily find that. But that's really cool. And yeah, I love Dexter, and I think that was really cool how they related the Dark Passenger. And when I initially
started, I'll take credit for that one.
Oh,
Ryan Holiday did.
Oh, no.
That's how it kind of came up for me. I was like, Ego is like
okay.
everyone's dark passenger. Yeah.
Oh, sure. Okay, well, that makes sense. I mean, because I'm a fan of the show, not a fan of the ending, fan of the show. But yeah. But
Ego was weak sauce.
Yeah,
the ending was weak sauce.
Sure. Yeah, but even going into that show, I did like how they used the Dark Passenger as well within the show, and I think it just really relates to our lives right now. And when I initially started watching the show, I didn't really think about it in that sense because I was still, I mean, I'm always growing, but I was not understanding it really on that level at this time. So speaking of the ego, one of the questions that comes to mind is like, speaking of, okay, so I said like, what's your favorite book? You said that. So like now let's hone down a little bit more on the ego. Like what's the best thing or one of the important things that you've learned through these readings and through studying this, and maybe it coincides with some of the Stoic philosophy that you've learned, but is there something that comes to mind that maybe is like almost even a day-to-day thing for you?
Yeah, good question. I'll say personally, one of the biggest takeaways that I got from that book or just that philosophy, and honestly a lot of Holiday's work in general, is really being able to look at how do we get better at responding to things versus just reacting. kind of twofold. How do we get better responding versus reacting, and analyzing our life and our thoughts and our actions and our deeds through the lens of what do I think that I deserve versus what have I actually earned? For ego, I think the latter is more important. Ego typically will kind of look like, for most people, like, I feel like, oh, I worked hard for this, or I deserve this. I've put in the reps, I've put in the hours. Well, cool. Like, no one's guaranteed shit in life. You could be doing this podcast. I can be doing my podcast, and all of a sudden, the internet breaks, and then like, oh, well, I worked so hard, well, cool. No one cares. Like, when shit hits the fan, the proverbial shit hits the fan in any way, like, it doesn't matter. Just because you did something X amount of times does not guarantee you X result. But if you look at it through, have I earned this kind of like end result? Okay, well, what is your end result? Are you just expecting someone else to give you a reward? Are you expecting someone to throw money or accolade at you? Or are you going about something intentionally so that you have a way to kind of effectively measure, yes, this is successful for me. I have earned this kind of new way of thinking. I have earned this ability to help somebody else. I have earned this right, this title, whatever, so that I can kind of continue and be of service, I think. So looking at, where am I digging my heels in on something? Am I thinking that, have I actually earned this, or do I just think that I deserve it for whatever reason? And then I'll say the react versus respond thing is kind of getting off a little bit more into his works on Stoicism. Like, The Daily Stoic is a book that I post up a caption of every day in my Instagram story, and a lot of his other book, The Obstacle is the Way, which probably right now would be a very timely read for people, is really looking at this big problem, big issue, big roadblock before us, and where most people will just like, okay, cool, we tried, shit sucks. Like, no, like, what is the gift in this, and how can we actually use it to move forward? So learning how to better respond to things that happen to us, for us, instead of just reacting with our initial, like, primal being of, fight or flight kind of thing, but actually looking at things, analyzing them, just honestly, sometimes taking a breath, just pausing sometimes can be all the difference it takes, all the difference in the world to effectively respond to something instead of just reacting. And in that reaction time, allowing a greater opportunity for ego to flare up versus actually looking at what is really going on, have more of an objective perspective, analyze it, find the gift in it, and drive on, move forward, man.
Yeah, I find that if I don't pause sometimes, on occasion, you're speaking about answering or thinking or analyzing objectively, I will do the exact opposite, and I will just, that immediate response, that knee-jerk response is an emotional response, and it's a very subjective response, and I don't make a clear decision. It's always like, you think about, you see somebody in the elevator, and then later you're like, oh, I wish I would have said this to him, or just whatever that situation is because you're thinking much more clearly. Or if you're dating somebody, oh, I should have said this to her, I should have said this to him, or something like that.
Yeah, you've had a chance to detach a little bit.
Exactly. So I love the pausing thing. And I can say, speaking from firsthand experience, me personally as a podcast host, one of the things that I've struggled with is not always answering. It may sound like I answer in real time, but I'm definitely processing, and it can be hard to listen to what somebody says and then retain what they're saying as they're saying it, and meet these words and meet these responses in a timely manner. So one of the things that I've benefited from that I would love to share is just pausing and really thinking about what I'm going to say, and not being afraid of the white space, I guess, so to say, that's there. And I think that's,
it's way longer in our head than it actually is.
It's so much. It's so funny. Yeah. And I know, that's
like, no, that was actually half a second. It felt like an hour.
Yeah. Well, it's weird because, like, and if you guys are listening on audio, we have this on YouTube as well. And when I'm looking at somebody, or when you're looking at somebody, and now especially, we're doing everything on Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Skype, things like that in today's world for what's going on. And when you're just looking at somebody via the screen and you pause, it can be weird, it can be awkward. But I think much like many things, overcoming that uncomfortability of that, and I think it's applicable to in-person conversations as well. So those are all great answers, all those things, the earned versus deserve. I think just having those conversations with yourself, and knowing that it's okay to have those conversations with yourself, but forcing yourself to ask yourself the tough questions. A lot of self stuff going on there.
Making time for it. I mean, forcing yourself might feel too much right now for some people, and for you, for me, for certain things. but just making time, making space for the what if, for the creative space, for the pausing, for the tactical pause, if you
Sure.
will.
No, it's really good. And I'll say we were speaking about day jobs before we started recording. And I think one of the things that has really helped me through that, and I would say with podcasting and pretty much anything I do in my life, is when I'm doing my day job, it's very structured and it's scheduled and it's meeting after meeting after thing after task. One of those things I'll recommend, and I don't know who I heard say it, but just block off time to just think. Like, am I doing what I need to be doing?
Yeah.
Am I headed in the correct trajectory, or do I need to realign myself? And that realignment, that pausing and realignment will save you more time than if you go down the wrong path.
Absolutely, man. It reminds me of another book that this concept is
Yes.
big in. Have you read The One Thing?
Oh, I've read it multiple times. I'm doing that book challenge one a week, and I read it twice in my dang book challenge.
I reread that book every year, usually always like January. It's my first book of the new year to kind of get me back in the mindset of time blocking, goal setting,
I think they suggest
that lead
that.
domino.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do that all the time, and I'll not constant. I'll say periodically visit. I have the Audible version as well, the audiobook. I'll go back to like pick a topic kind of thing and revisit it. But man, I'm with you. My time blocking. I schedule my breakfast, my morning walks, my podcast, my lunch, my workout, my dead space, my fun time. And it can maybe kind of seem like overkill, but I'm telling you, man, it sounds like you have realized this as well, that if you don't, those things will slip through the cracks.
Yeah.
The you time, the time to just pause and reflect, the time to analyze, the time to do nothing. Sometimes, shout out again, Ryan Holiday, stillness is the key. Like, these are crucial components to not only just the human experience, but to human optimization. If you want to get better at just being a damn good human being, being able to be comfortable with that dead space yourself. I think that's why a lot of people don't like pauses, or it feels like so long and awkward, is because we're not really concerned about the other person. We're concerned about like I'm not comfortable being alone. I'm not comfortable with pausing. It's you need to make time for these things. You need to make time for everything in your life that matters. And if you don't make time for it, you're going to realize that, like, where did this go? Where did that hobby go? Where did my relationship go? Where did my pastime go? Where did my career go? I mean, look, we all have the same amount of time. So like, literally just block it off and see what's working for you and see what doesn't, man. It's all about those after action reviews,
Yeah, man. I would definitely have to echo much of what you said. And I think, again, in today's times when you're at home, so like and I talked about it in a recent contemplation episode, the solo podcast that I do. And I gave a bunch of tips and tricks because I've been working at home for a little while by myself. And I find that when people commute and they go to work, they have this schedule and they adhere to that. And when they're done work, they're mentally checked out, they're done work, and they're able to do things with their family or whatever their hobby is and things like that. So if you're listening and you're working at home for the first time and you're a new listener and you haven't listened to that episode, one of the things I suggested, and I'm sure you agree, is, or I know you do, because we talked about scheduling and such a strict thing, and you would think it's more constricting, but it actually allows for more freedom and allows for that more time.
Liberating.
And do it. And schedule your days at home. Like, I wake up, like, I'll put work clothes on, I go to the gym at the same time, like, eat at the same time, take care of my daughter at the same time, hang out with my wife at the same time. Because if I didn't schedule that, I would be at work until like 10 p.m. just working. So don't be a slave to the lack of scheduling. Like, schedule it to enjoy your freedom, ensure that you're making time for that. So I love, like, that was really good. I love that you brought that up, man. That's awesome. So
it's important. Yeah, it's not restricting, it's liberating. Absolutely.
Yeah. So one of the other things I wanted to talk about, and is there's two things, and I'm only going to talk about one with the time that we have left, because one of the things I like talking about is obstacles that you've had in your life. And we kind of talked about that initially with your military transition and learning how to walk twice. I mean, I think that's probably one of the bigger things in your life, and maybe there's other things, but for the sake of this episode and just a few minutes left, I want to leave us with one of the questions I asked almost every single guest, and that's, why do you help people? And I know it sounds like such a simple question, and if you listened before, you heard me say, like, me asking the question promotes the answer, and most everybody answers it differently than the last. So I want to ask you the question, why do you help people? Why do you not just stop at being better for yourself? Why didn't you just stop after, I can walk again? Why didn't you just stop after creating a successful podcast? All of these things. You helped me in Instagram direct messages, and you're helping me now.
I think twofold, but like the first thing that comes to mind is because when I look back at the most difficult times of my life, the most transformational, the most exciting, um, really everything from being a little kid to a teenager to joining the military to being in school, corporate America, self-employed, like my whole timeline of existence. When I look back at the things that have mattered most to me, that have helped propel me forward, that have just have left lasting impressions, I've never done it alone.
Mm.
I've always had a person or persons. Growing up, I was very, very close with my father and my stepmom. And actually, that was another big hardship. He was in the Army as well. I wanted to kind of follow in his footsteps, and just months after I joined the military, he was terminal. He passed away in 2005 to a horrible, horrible, cruel illness. And that left me lost in the sauce. And people that helped get me through that time period, that long time period, there were others than just me.
Yeah.
I had leaders, I had mentors, I had peers, I had subordinates, I had people in my life that, whether I realized it at the time or now I can look back with hindsight, like, yes, if it was not for that person, for that group, for that book, for that podcast, for that coach, for that mentor, for that random stranger kind of just saying something that got me thinking, like, I would not be here. I would not be doing what I'm doing if I had stayed the course alone. And so it would be the most selfish thing in the world, I think, to just like make for me, because I've been there. When you reached out, random person hit me up on DM, hey, I have a question about podcasts. Like, I've had those questions. I've been there. And so it's why I try to stay engaged as much as possible and just provide an answer or a resource or just a thought, or just honestly, sometimes just being there for somebody.
Yeah.
Because I've been in all those positions and I know what it means when you get even just a little bit of a response, a little bit of help. And I also know what it means when you don't. And it feels not so great when you don't. Mm-hmm. And I felt that, and I don't ever want anybody to feel that. So I just try my best to just keep going, keep moving. And it also doesn't hurt that I've kind of made it my business, and my whole belief system of ever forward came from my dad. It came from this phrase of when we lost him, when we watched him die. It was his phrase, his mantra, this thing that he had said our entire life. And we finally got to see it in motion, no matter what. I mean, this guy, my hero, my best friend, my dad, a husband, a father, a son, all these things, was just withering away for months and months and months, and just becoming a prisoner in his own body. And you would think if anybody had the right to complain or to just, cry out, why God me, or just make other people's lives miserable, you think you would have thought it would have been him. But I mean, literally until his last breath, he had nothing but just smile on his face as best he could. He really lost control of his body, couldn't speak. And so he set that example for me. And so it would have been the most dishonor I think I could have ever done to just keep things for me and not take that and run with it. And so that's kind of the quick story of Ever Forward. And that's why I think, it's so important for me to, always be in service.
I appreciate you sharing that with us. It was really powerful and really heavy and really emotional. And that's why I love asking that question, because we all come from such different backgrounds and we've experienced such different things. But at the same time, a lot of us have experienced the similar things, and everybody lose somebody, and that's really terrible. And it's just so incredible to hear of what an example he was to you, and that the impact Truly, that you're making right now as a direct result about that. And whether you believe it or not, I mean, he's proud of you, and I know that, but
I think so, man. Thank you.
And I know we just met like 35 minutes ago, but he definitely is, because I'd like to think the same exact thing. And that's really cool, man, to hear you say that. So I appreciate, again, you sharing that with us, and dang, that's awesome. That's such a great note to end on. I appreciate it. So yeah, man,
it took me a long time to get to a point
I'm sure
to be able to talk about it. But I mean, again, like I said, the greatest things that come before us, the greatest things that seem like the end of the road, the blockade, that's what I thought it was for me. And it was a hard 10, 12 years really for me to even like be able to talk about it, to not suffered like crippling panic attacks and like just really bad. But then when I just started doing a lot of things that we're talking about and reading all the books and listening to all the podcasts, and just began to ask difficult questions like, all right, well, what if this was a good thing? Or what is the gift in this? What is the message? And just slowly over time, my perspective changed, my mindset changed, my habits changed, my day-to-day changed, my job changed, my level of fulfillment, everything. And all it came from just challenging the obstacle instead of the obstacle challenging me.
Wow. That is awesome. I cannot wait. I was like, I'm a one-man band. I edit this stuff myself, and I love going back and listening to these episodes, man, because it's just it's so great. So I appreciate it. So before we get out of here,
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Let everybody know how they can find you.
Yeah, so I run the Ever Forward Radio podcast. That's where I live and breathe. We do 3 shows a week. Outside of that, I mean, we're any podcast platform wherever you listen. Google, Apple, Spotify. I also film them for YouTube. You can find us there. But if it's not Ever Forward Radio, I live and breathe and hang out and answer tech problems for podcasters and and coaches and all the things on Instagram. I'm at Chase_tuning.
Yeah, that's cool. And I did want to sneak in there that I actually wrote something down, and I wanted to ask you about why you selected the name Ever Forward. So I just that answers my question.
My tattoo,
oh man, it's so cool.
It was my license plate. It even has a cooler, kind of longer history. Real quick, not only it was like this phrase that my dad said growing up. I heard it my whole life. My whole family did, but he picked it up. Every unit, at least in the Army, we have a phrase, a saying. Mm-hmm. His first duty station was with the 116th Infantry Regiment, this National Guard unit out of Virginia. Their creed, their saying was Ever Forward. That unit actually goes back to technically before we were a country. This band of militia, I think like 1772, something like that. This was their phrase. This was their saying. And then, and then he went on to join. He went active duty, 101st Airborne. Cool. But that first unit, Ever Forward, it hit him. Wow. And thankfully, he didn't keep it to himself. He shared it. And, brought it home. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't keep it to yourself. I love that. And that's why I love you're able to share your story. Every tragic story, every happy story, I think should be shared even if that individual may not be ready for it. So I appreciate it. You guys definitely check that out. It's going to be in the show notes as always. Yeah, Chase, I really appreciate it. Like I said, this is really good. This is really fun. I'm glad we connected. I'm glad you helped me. I'm glad we took it a step further and finally recorded. Yeah, man. Have a great rest of your night. I'll talk to you soon.
Appreciate you. Thanks, brother.
See ya.